The sun had barely risen over the quiet village of Alderwood when Alara felt a strange presence outside her small cottage. The mist clung to the ground like silver smoke, and the wooden shutters rattled softly in the morning wind. She had lived in this village all her life, tending her garden and helping her neighbors, and yet a deep unease filled her chest, as if the air itself whispered warnings. A sudden knock at her door made her heart leap. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped carefully to the entrance. Standing there was a man unlike any she had ever seen. Tall, commanding, dressed in rich velvet with a cloak the color of midnight, he carried an air of authority that made her instinctively bow her head. In his arms, he held a small bundle, swaddled in soft white cloth. "Good morning," he said, his voice deep and calm. "I have something for you." Alara blinked, confused. "For me?" He nodded solemnly and, without another word, lifted the bundle into her arms. She gasped at the weight, a child, warm and alive, with tiny hands that curled around her fingers. But it was the Marquis's next words that froze her entirely. "He's my son, but not my wife's." The sentence hung in the air like a storm about to break. Ilara's eyes widened. I don't understand," she whispered. Why give him to me?" The Marquis's gaze, dark and unreadable, met hers. "Because he is in danger. My wife would see him destroyed rather than free. Only you can protect him, Alara. Only you have the courage and the heart to keep him safe." Alara felt the baby stir in her arms, tiny fists punching the air. A soft, urgent cry escaped his lips. She looked up at the Marquis, unsure whether to obey or flee. The weight of responsibility pressed on her like a stone. I don't know if I can," she began. But the Marquis cut her off with a firm, yet not cruel gesture. "You can," he said, "and you must. For his sake, for all our sakes." Before she could ask more, he turned, his cloak flowing like liquid night, and left her doorstep. The village remained silent. Birds flitted nervously among the trees, and the mist curled around her ankles like gentle fingers. Alara held the child close to her chest, his warmth seeping into her skin. A strange connection flared in her heart, something she could not name but could not ignore. The first hours were a haze of wonder and fear. She washed and fed the baby, whispering lullabies she had never sung before. Each time she looked at him, she saw a spark, something ancient and powerful in his small, shining eyes. The village had never seen a child like this, she realized. And neither had she. As evening fell, shadows lengthening across the forest edge, a chill settled over the village. Alara wrapped the baby in a blanket and stepped outside, hoping the night air might calm both of them. But the darkness seemed alive, pressing in closer with each step. And then she saw it, a hooded figure, standing silently at the edge of the clearing. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling despite her attempt at courage. The figure did not answer. Instead, it lifted a hand, pointing toward her cottage. A soft whisper floated through the air, almost carried by the wind itself. "Beware, he is not safe. She comes for him." Alara's pulse quickened. She clutched the baby tighter and ran back inside, locking the door and placing every chair and piece of furniture she could move against it. The child cried, sensing her fear, and she pressed her face to his soft hair. Promising him safety, she did not yet know how to provide. She remembered the Marquis's words again, and a cold shiver ran down her spine. Only you can protect him. But how could a simple village woman stand against the power of a noble, a wife, and something darker that seemed to hover in the night? Hours passed slowly. The fire in the hearth crackled, and the baby finally drifted into a restless sleep. Alara sat beside him, her mind racing. She thought of the Marquis, his eyes, stern yet filled with some emotion she could not read. There was grief there, a deep and quiet sorrow, as if carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And in that grief, she felt an echo of her own, a longing for something greater. something she had never dared to dream of. By midnight, the shadows outside seemed to move with purpose. The wind howled through the village, bending trees and rattling shutters. A soft tapping sounded at her window, barely audible over the storm. Elara froze, heart hammering. Another whisper reached her ears. "Do not trust. Do not fall asleep. He will take him." She clutched the baby and thought of the Marquis again. He had risked everything to give her the child. Could she fail him now? Could she fail this small life, so fragile, yet so full of promise? She pressed her forehead to the baby's, whispering softly, "I will not let anyone hurt you. I swear it." Suddenly, a memory flickered in her mind. A story her grandmother had told her of spirits that lived in the forest, guardians of children and wanderers, watching over those chosen by fate. Could they hear her vow? Could they help her protect this boy? Determined, she rose and gathered what she could: blankets, a satchel of food, and herbs for healing. She needed to move, to hide, to trust that the forest might shield her from the dangers closing in. Outside, the storm had eased slightly, leaving the night thick with fog. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret, and the air tasted of something ancient and alive. As she stepped toward the path leading into the woods, a figure appeared from the mist, tall, cloaked in black, and impossibly still. She could not see a face, but she felt eyes on her. A sudden gust of wind carried a whisper so close it seemed to come from inside her head. "You cannot protect him alone." Elara froze, fear and resolve warring in her chest. She knew, in that moment, that the world she had known, simple, safe, predictable, was gone. Her life, and the life of the child in her arms, had been claimed by something far larger than either of them. And yet, beneath the fear, a strange thrill pulsed through her. She was chosen. Chosen to fight, to protect, to love, and perhaps even to change the fate of all who were bound by darkness. The night deepened. Somewhere in the distance, a lone wolf howled, its cry both mournful and hauntingly beautiful. Elara tightened her grip on the baby and stepped into the forest. The trees loomed like silent sentinels, and the fog swirled around her legs as if guiding her path. She did not know where she was going, but she knew she could not turn back. And then, just as she thought the shadows might let her pass, a figure stepped from between the trees, cloaked, hooded, impossible. The baby stirred violently in her arms, sensing the presence. The figure raised a hand slowly, deliberately, and a cold, echoing voice filled the air. "The Marquis's son. He belongs to me." Elara's breath caught. Her heart pounded in her chest. She pressed the child close, stepping backward, realizing with sudden clarity that this was only the beginning. The storm that had brought the child to her doorstep was nothing compared to the darkness that now hunted them. And somewhere, in the depth of the night, the Marquis's words returned to her, heavy with warning and hope. "Only you can protect him." Tears pricked her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She would not falter. She would not surrender. With one final, trembling step forward into the fog, she whispered to the child, her voice both fierce and gentle, "You will be safe with me. I promise you, no matter what comes." The figure in the shadows laughed softly, a sound that chilled her to the bone. Then, without another word, it disappeared into the fog, leaving only a black feather fluttering to the ground. Elara looked down at the feather, then at the child in her arms. The night seemed endless, the forest alive with secrets and danger. But in her heart, a single flame of determination burned brighter than the fear. And in that choice, something powerful, ancient, and unknowable had begun to stir a bond between a village girl, a Marquis, and a child who carried the weight of destiny itself. The journey had begun. And already, the first whispers of fate were echoing through the forest, unseen and unstoppable. Elara pressed forward through the forest, her feet sinking into the damp earth, and her mind racing with fear and questions. The mist clung to her like a cold cloak, twisting the shapes of the trees into strange, threatening forms. The baby slept quietly in her arms, yet she could feel his small body shivering, as if he already sensed the danger lurking in the shadows. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of leaves, made her heart leap. She kept glancing behind, half expecting the hooded figure to reappear. The forest, she realized, was no ordinary wood. It pulsed with something alive, something ancient. It was as if the trees themselves watched her, whispering in the language of wind and leaves. She paused by a moss-covered stone, her breath ragged. "Stay close, little one," she whispered, brushing the baby's fine hair from his forehead. "I won't let anyone take you." In that quiet moment, a memory of the Marquis flashed in her mind. His dark eyes, heavy with sorrow. The weight in his voice when he handed her the baby. There was more to him than his title and power. She sensed grief, regret, and perhaps even longing. But she did not yet know his full story. Not yet. Hours passed, and the path grew steeper, twisting around cliffs and streams. The forest seemed endless, a living maze that reshaped itself as if testing her determination. Just when exhaustion threatened to drag her down, she spotted a glimmer of light ahead. A small clearing, bathed in moonlight, offered a place to rest. Elara settled under a massive oak, its branches spreading wide like protective arms. She laid the baby gently on a bed of ferns and moss, and for the first time allowed herself a moment to breathe. The night was still, but the silence was uneasy, as if the forest held its own breath. She thought of the Marquis again, and the words he had spoken. Only you can protect him. She did not yet know why he had trusted her. A simple village girl, with the life of a child who carried such importance. And yet, she felt a strange courage welling inside her. Somehow, she would find a way. Somehow, she would protect him. But the forest offered no time for hope alone. A distant rustle drew her attention. Shadows moved unnaturally among the trees, coalescing into forms that seemed human. Yet something was wrong. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, and the air around them shimmered with unnatural energy. Elara grabbed the baby and scrambled to her feet. "Who's there?" she called, her voice shaking but firm. No answer came. Only the soft sound of footsteps approaching. She ran, weaving between trees, trying to put distance between herself and the dark figures. But no matter how far she ran, they seemed always just a step behind, whispering in voices that chilled her to the bone. The child belongs to her. The bloodline must be claimed. Panic rose in her chest. She had never known fear like this, but she pushed it aside, focusing on the warmth of the baby in her arms. Every instinct in her screamed to protect him, to move faster, to survive. Hours of running brought her to a riverbank, where the moonlight reflected off the water like silver fire. She paused, gasping for breath, and lowered the baby onto a flat rock. The river's gentle current seemed to calm her, as if the world itself offered a brief reprieve. She could hear the forest behind her rustling again, but the darkness felt less immediate here. It was in that quiet moment that she noticed the strange markings on the rocks by the river. Symbols etched into stone, faint but glowing with a soft blue light. Curiosity overcame fear for a moment. She traced the lines with her finger and felt a strange warmth spread through her hand. The symbols seemed to pulse, alive, as if they held some kind of ancient power. Suddenly, a voice, low and melodic, spoke from the shadows. "You seek to hide the child, but the forest sees all." Elara spun around. A figure stepped into the moonlight, a woman, cloaked in flowing robes that shimmered like water, her hair silver in the moonlight. Her eyes were deep pools of wisdom and sorrow. Who are you?" Elara asked, gripping the baby tightly. "I am Leora," the woman said. "Guardian of these woods, protector of those chosen by fate. The child you carry is bound to destiny, and danger follows him because of the blood in his veins. The Marquis gave him to you because only one with courage and heart can shield him from the darkness." Elara swallowed hard, trying to understand. "The Marquis? He trusts me? Why?" Leora stepped closer, her voice gentle yet heavy with warning. "He has lived with secrets and regrets. He has loved and lost. And now, he must ask for help where he never imagined. You are his hope, Elara. The boy is tied to a curse older than any kingdom, and the Marquis seeks to claim him for power that should not be wielded." Elara's mind reeled. "A curse? What kind of curse?" "The blood of his father's line is both blessing and burden," Leora said. "Magic that brings strength also brings darkness. The child is innocent, but forces will try to shape him into a weapon. Only love, sacrifice, and courage can break the cycle." Elara looked down at the baby. His tiny fists curled, and for the first time, she understood the weight of what had been entrusted to her. This was no ordinary child. He carried hope and danger in equal measure. "Then I must protect him," she whispered. "Yes," Leora said, "but the path will not be easy. Shadows follow, and choices will test your heart. You must learn the forest, the spirits, and even the boy himself. Only then can you hope to keep him safe." Before Elara could ask more, a sudden movement in the trees caught her attention. Dark figures emerged, moving swiftly and silently, their eyes glowing with malice. The Marquis's agents had found them. Elara clutched the baby, her fear igniting into fierce determination. Leora stepped beside her, raising her hands, and the symbols on the rocks glowed brighter. The forest seemed to answer, the wind howling and branches bending as if alive. The figures hesitated, sensing the power surrounding Elara. She felt a strange confidence welling inside her. She would not run. She would not falter. She would protect this child, no matter the cost. And then, in the distance, a familiar voice rang out low, commanding, yet filled with emotion. "Elara!" Her heart leapt. Through the shadows, she saw him, the Marquis, moving swiftly, his dark cloak flowing, eyes fixed on them. Relief and fear warred within her. He had come, but had he brought more danger as well? He reached them in moments, kneeling beside her, eyes scanning the dark forms surrounding them. "You have done well," he said, voice heavy with relief. "But this is only the beginning. The curse, the Marquis, they will not give up easily." Elara looked up at him, questions burning in her mind. "Then why me? Why give him to me?" The Marquis hesitated, a shadow of pain crossing his face. "Because you have a heart they cannot touch, a courage I do not always see in myself, and because I trust you." The words struck her, soft and powerful, stirring feelings she could not name. Fear, yes, but also something deeper, a connection she could not deny, something both tender and dangerous. But there was no time for wonder. The forest seemed to tense around them, as if sensing the darkness that lingered. Leora's voice cut through the air. "You must move. The child's power grows with every passing moment, and so does the danger. The Marquis will come, and shadows will follow. Trust in each other, and in the forest. Only then will you survive." Elara lifted the baby once more, feeling his warmth, his life, his hope. She glanced at the Marquis, seeing the same determination reflected in his eyes. Together, they would face the coming storm, though neither knew what sacrifices it would demand. As they disappeared into the deeper forest, the night whispered its secrets. Shadows flitted at the edge of vision, and the wind carried faint, haunting laughter. Somewhere far away, the Marquise stirred, her obsession with the child driving her into the dark heart of the kingdom. Ilara knew their journey had only begun. She held the child close, feeling the weight of destiny and the spark of something powerful between herself and the Marquis. The forest seemed to guide their steps, yet the path was uncertain, dangerous, and full of secrets waiting to be revealed. And then, a chill wind wrapped around her shoulders, carrying a whisper she could not ignore. You cannot hide him forever. The child is bound to darkness. And to you. Ilara's grip tightened on the baby. The forest was alive, the danger was real, and the boy in her arms was more than a child. He was the future, the hope, and the burden all at once. And she would not fail him. The forest grew denser as Ilara, the baby, and the Marquis pressed deeper into its heart. Moonlight filtered through the twisted branches, casting long, flickering shadows on the mossy ground. Every step seemed to echo with both wonder and danger, the air thick with magic and the unspoken weight of secrets. Ilara's arms ached from holding the child, yet she could not set him down. He stirred occasionally, his small hands brushing her chest, as if sensing her determination. She stole a glance at the Marquis walking beside her. He moved with the grace of one used to command and battle, but there was something in his eyes, a shadow of regret, that made her chest tighten. For hours, they moved in silence, the forest alive with whispering winds and distant calls of unseen creatures. Finally, they came upon a ruined stone temple, half swallowed by ivy and time. Its crumbling walls were etched with symbols that glowed faintly under the moonlight. The air here felt different, heavier, charged with the power of old magic. This place, Ilara said, voice low. Why here? The Marquis knelt beside a fallen pillar, his fingers brushing over the moss-covered runes. It is where my ancestors sought to control the curse, and it is where you and I must face the truth of what we carry. Ilara's heart thudded. The child, the curse, I still don't understand. Why does she want him? Why give him to me? The Marquis sighed, the weight of his confession pressing down like a storm. Because I feared for his life. And because I trusted that you would protect him better than I ever could. His eyes darkened, and for the first time, his voice trembled. I cannot tell you everything yet. It is dangerous, but you deserve the truth, even if it frightens you. Ilara felt a mixture of fear and curiosity. She had already faced the forest, the shadows, and threats she could scarcely name. She steeled herself. Tell me, she whispered. I need to know. He took a deep breath. The child. He is the result of a pact I made long ago. A pact meant to save my family from the curse that has haunted every generation. My ancestors were cursed with power that could not be controlled. Every child born into our line carries a fragment of darkness, a seed that grows into either destruction or salvation. I sought to break it, and the enchantress, the one who guided me, offered a solution. But it came at a price. Ilara listened, clutching the baby tighter. His small eyes opened and blinked at her, and she felt a strange, quiet understanding in his gaze. I did not foresee everything, the Marquis continued. And now, the Marquise, my estranged wife, knows of this child. She seeks to bend his power for her own ends. He is the key to everything she desires, and she will not stop until she has him. That is why I brought him to you. Only someone who is pure of heart, who loves without desire for power, can keep him safe. Our road. Tudia. That is why I brought him Tudia. 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 Ilara's mind swirled. The child in her arms, so tiny and fragile, carried the weight of an entire lineage, a legacy of magic, danger, and blood. And yet, She did not feel fear alone. She felt something deeper, an unspoken bond forming between her and the Marquis, and between her and the child. The Marquis's gaze softened as he looked at her. I know this is unfair. I know I ask too much. But I cannot do this alone. His voice broke slightly. I cannot protect him without you. Elara's chest tightened at his words. She wanted to say she was just a simple village girl, that she could not be trusted with such responsibility. But the baby's small hand curled around her finger. And in that moment, she knew she had no choice. She would fight. She would protect him. And somehow, she would face the darkness ahead. Before she could speak, a sudden rustling came from the shadows. Figures emerged, dark and menacing, moving with unnatural grace. The Marquis's agents had found them. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting a hunger for power and malice that made Elara's blood run cold. The Marquis rose swiftly, placing himself between Elara and the approaching figures. Stay behind me, he commanded. Do not let them touch him. Elara's heart pounded. She had already faced fear, but now it took a tangible form in the dark shapes, advancing through the temple ruins. The baby stirred in her arms, his small cries soft but insistent. She pressed him closer, drawing strength from the life she carried in her arms. The dark figures halted, sensing the power that lingered in the temple ruins. The air shimmered with tension, the symbols on the stones glowing brighter, as if responding to the imminent conflict. Elara felt the Marquis's hand brush hers for a brief moment, a silent reassurance. Their eyes met, and in that instant, she understood something powerful. They were bound together, not only by the child, but by a shared responsibility. A bond forged in fear, courage, and something unspoken that neither dared name. The agents stepped forward, shadows stretching unnaturally, their whispers slicing through the night. The boy belongs to her. The bloodline must be claimed. The Marquis drew a dagger, its blade catching the moonlight. You will not take him, he said, voice firm, each word carrying the weight of command and love alike. Elara felt a surge of courage. She stepped forward slightly, holding the baby high, and whispered a soft chant she had learned from Leora, the forest guardian. The symbols on the stones pulsed, glowing brighter, and a wave of energy swept through the clearing. The dark figures staggered, hissing in frustration. The Marquis fought with skill and precision, his movements fluid and controlled. But the shadows pressed closer. Elara realized, with sudden clarity, that their survival depended not only on his strength, but on her own courage and the child's hidden power. She felt the energy hum in the baby. Faint, but undeniable. The child was not just a boy, he was a force waiting to awaken. And they were the guardians who must protect him until he was ready. A loud crash sounded as one of the shadowy figures lunged toward them. The Marquis struck with the dagger, and the figure dissipated into smoke with a low wail. Elara held her ground, chanting softly, feeling the forest's magic respond to her will. The shadows recoiled, but more continued to emerge, relentless and unyielding. The battle raged for what felt like hours, though time had lost meaning under the moonlit sky. Finally, the shadows retreated, dissolving into the night, leaving only a faint mist behind. Elara's arms ached, her chest heaved, but the baby slept peacefully, untouched by the chaos that had surrounded them. The Marquis knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. You did well, he said, voice low. You are stronger than you know. And the child, he is safe. For now. Elara looked at him, her chest tight with unspoken emotion. I don't understand. Why me? Why did you trust me? The Marquis's gaze softened, filled with something she had not seen before, something that went beyond duty and fear. Because I have seen your heart, he said quietly, and because I cannot face this alone. The truth is, Elara, I am bound to this curse, as much as the child is. I have made mistakes, and I have loved and lost. But with you, I feel something I have not felt in a long time. Courage, hope, maybe even redemption. Ilara's fingers brushed his hand, a silent acknowledgement of the bond forming between them. Fear, danger, and responsibility surrounded them, yet there was a flicker of warmth, of connection, that neither could deny. As they rested under the ancient temple's shadow, the forest seemed to breathe around them, the energy of the stones pulsing softly. But even in this fragile peace, danger lingered. The Marquis would not give up, and the shadows she sent were relentless. The child's power was growing, and so was the darkness that sought to claim him. Ilara pressed the baby close, whispering softly, "I will protect you, no matter what comes." The Marquis watched her, a mixture of admiration, fear, and something deeper reflecting in his eyes. He knew the road ahead would test them, demand sacrifices, and perhaps even change who they were at their core. Yet for the first time, he allowed himself a sliver of hope. Perhaps together, they could survive the storm, and maybe even break the curse. But the night was not yet done. From the shadows, a soft, chilling voice drifted through the air, carried on the wind. "Enjoy your brief reprieve. It will not last. The child is mine, and the price of defiance is far greater than you imagine." Ilara shivered, clutching the baby tighter. The forest whispered warnings. The stones glowed faintly, and the Marquis's hand tightened around hers. Their journey had grown darker, the stakes higher, and the enemy closer than ever. Yet in that shared moment, they understood one thing. They were bound together by fate, by courage, and by the fragile hope that love, even in shadow, could be a weapon against darkness. And somewhere deep in the ruins, the air shimmered with power, waiting, watching, as if the temple itself knew that the next battle would change everything. The forest was silent but heavy, as if it held its breath for the moment to come. Ilara tightened her grip on the baby, feeling the steady rhythm of his tiny heart beneath her fingers. The Marquis walked beside her, silent and watchful, his eyes scanning the shadows for the enemies that would surely return. Every rustle, every whisper of wind, set their nerves on edge. "This way," the Marquis said softly, leading her through a narrow path veiled by mist. "There is a place, a sanctuary. If we reach it, the child will be safe long enough for us to confront what must be faced." Ilara's mind raced with questions, but she followed without protest. The path led them to a hidden glade, encircled by towering ancient trees. Moonlight spilled through the branches, illuminating a small pool in the center. Here, the forest seemed protective, alive, as though it had chosen this moment to aid them. "This is the place," the Marquis said, kneeling beside the water. "The spirits of the forest answer to it. I have never returned here since the enchantress guided me, but now, we must." Ilara laid the baby on a bed of soft moss. He stirred, blinking up at her with curious eyes, as if sensing the importance of the place. She pressed a finger to his lips, murmuring, "Rest now. We are almost there." The Marquis drew a circle in the earth with his dagger, etching ancient runes that glowed faintly in the moonlight. "These runes will protect him temporarily," he said, voice low, "but they cannot hold forever. The Marquise is coming, and her power grows stronger with every moment." Ilara knelt beside him, her fear mixing with determination. "Then, we face her," she said simply. "Together." The Marquis looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "Together," he repeated, and for the first time, the walls he had built around his heart seemed to tremble. The night grew colder, and from the shadows, the Marquise appeared. She moved like a shadow herself, her eyes glowing with cruel intelligence. Behind her, Figures emerged, dark emissaries born of her magic, twisting and writhing like living smoke. "You think you can hide him?" the Marquise said, her voice both soft and deadly. "But destiny will not be denied. The child is mine by right, by blood, and by curse." Elara pressed herself against the Marquis. Fear surged, but it was tempered by the strength she drew from the child. The baby's small hand brushed her cheek, and she felt a strange warmth, a pulse of life that seemed to say, "I am ready." The Marquis drew his dagger, its blade glinting in the moonlight. "He belongs to no one but the innocent," he said. "You will not touch him." "Gnome." The Marquise laughed, a sound that twisted through the trees. "Innocence is a fleeting thing. Power is eternal. And you," she sneered, looking at Elara, "are just a girl playing at courage." Elara stepped forward, feeling the forest's magic respond to her heartbeat. She whispered words Leora had taught her, words that called upon the spirits of the ancient trees. The ground beneath the Marquise's feet trembled, and her dark emissaries hissed, recoiling from the unseen force. The baby stirred, eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. Energy radiated from him, gentle but undeniable, and Elara realized what the Marquis had hinted at. The child's power was awakening. His tiny hands stretched toward the Marquise, and a wave of light shot through the clearing, scattering shadows and forcing the enemies to retreat. The Marquise's expression changed shock, then rage. "You cannot control him!" she shouted. Elara felt the warmth of the child's power in her arms, a connection she could not explain. It was as if the child's very soul had reached out to hers, binding them together in courage, love, and hope. She pressed her lips to his forehead and whispered, "We are together, always." The Marquis stepped beside her, placing a hand over hers. "Let the forest guide you," he murmured. "Trust in what you feel. Trust in him." Together, they focused, drawing upon the child's latent power. The light expanded, filling the glade, driving the Marquise and her emissaries backward. The shadows dissolved like smoke, leaving only the Marquise, stunned and weakened. You cannot win," she hissed. "We already have," Elara said, voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "Because he is ours to protect. Because love, not power, shapes destiny." The Marquise's eyes blazed, but she could not step forward. The forest itself seemed to rise against her, trees bending, vines twisting, and roots reaching out as if to guard the child. Her power faltered, splintered by the combined strength of Elara's courage, the Marquis's skill, and the awakening magic of the boy. For the first time, the Marquis spoke not as a noble, not as a warrior, but as a man who had carried grief and regret for far too long. "It ends tonight," he said. His voice carried the weight of every loss, every choice, every love he had denied himself. And in that moment, Elara saw him fully, not the feared nobleman, but a man willing to fight for what he loved, willing to risk everything for hope. The Marquise let out a scream that seemed to split the night, then turned and fled into the darkness, leaving her emissaries behind. The forest fell silent once more, the glowing runes dimming to soft blue, and the child in Elara's arms yawned peacefully, unaware of the battle that had been waged in his name. Elara sank to her knees, holding him close. "It's over," she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You're safe now." The Marquis knelt beside her, brushing her hair from her face. "No," he said softly. "It's never over. Darkness will always return. But now we have a choice." Elara looked at him, confusion in her eyes. "A choice?" Yes," he said, his voice steady, full of a strength and vulnerability she had never imagined. "We can let the curse rule us, or we can bind it with love and courage. It will not disappear, but it can be transformed. And together, we can guide him, guide the child, toward a life free from the shadows that seek him. Her heart swelled with understanding. The path ahead would not be easy. They would face dangers, enemies, and tests that would try to break their spirits. But for the first time, she felt hope not just for the child, but for herself and the Marquis, for the bond forming between them, forged in fear, trust, and love. The baby stirred, tiny fingers brushing against the Marquis's hand. The man's expression softened, and he reached out to touch the child's cheek. "You are our hope," he said quietly, "and we will protect you, no matter the cost." Elara stood, lifting the baby into her arms, feeling the warmth of both his life and the forest's blessing. The Marquis joined her, placing a hand on her shoulder. And together, they looked out over the moonlit forest, knowing that the night was calm, but that it had changed them forever. The forest whispered its approval, gentle winds carrying the scent of ancient magic. Somewhere far beyond the trees, the Marquise plotted. But for now, she was at bay. They had survived the night. They had protected the child. And in doing so, they had discovered something even more powerful than magic: courage, love, and the strength to face the darkness together. Elara's heart beat steadily as she looked at the Marquis. We did it," she said softly, though her voice trembled with emotion. "No," he replied, his eyes locking with hers, a spark of unspoken feeling passing between them. "We survived. But the story, it is only beginning." The baby cooed, reaching for Elara's face, and she smiled through her tears. For the first time in her life, she felt fully alive, fully responsible, fully connected to something greater than herself. The curse would return, danger would come again, but for now, she had hope and she had love. And as the first light of dawn broke through the trees, painting the forest in gold and silver, the three of them, Elara, the Marquis, and the child, stood together, bound by courage, magic, and an unbreakable promise. The future was uncertain. The darkness would return, but they were ready. And in that readiness, they found a power stronger than any curse: the choice to face it together and to shape their destiny with love.